Welcome to Hater TV. I'm Lo-Fi Nikita, and this is my co-host, Giselle. Giselle, Mama Gator, with 4 hungry little babies on her back, which keeps her kind of edgy. I brought her on board because some people and reptiles said I needed a sidekick to help me keep things moving. Like right now, she says, get on with the show. Okay, fine, I was just introducing you. We've all heard the saying, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Probation officers say it, God knows why, since they supposedly don't want anybody to do crime, but whatever. There are some people who never have to talk to probation officers, even though they do crime, because they are the government. They make the laws, and when they break them, they give themselves a break and rarely do time. Take Ted Stevens, the Alaska senator convicted of 7 counts of taking bribes by a Washington, D.C. jury, and is on track to be reelected by the voters of Alaska at last report. Even though he's been convicted, he told the voters he'll be vindicated on appeal, I suppose, and the voters believed him. So now he's 2 percentage points ahead against the Democratic challenger 4 days after the polls closed. But they keep counting out of sheer disbelief that Alaska will become the first state to elect a convicted felon to the United States Senate. And over the advice of John McCain, who said Stevens should find a hole in the ice to permanently occupy. Kind of puzzles me, Giselle. What do you think? Oh, you'd like to eat them? Well, that's why they stay up in Alaska, where you can't get to them. You know what? Just wait until the icebergs melt. Well, they'll be waiting, and Ted Stevens promised he'll never stop fighting for Alaska, which is probably why they reelected him. Another state lucky to have a criminal for a senator is Indiana, represented by Larry Craig, who pled guilty to soliciting sex from an undercover male policeman in an airport latrine, but now claims he just uses a wide stance when he occupies a public john. Just like Ted Stevens, he's hanging onto his seat, no pun intended, because just like Ted, he was framed by a prosecutorial system run amok. They're newfound converts to the American criminal justice system, you know, the one with the presumption of innocence, the right to remain silent, the right to claim you're innocent until the last appeal is exhausted, all that balderdash that honest people have no need of unless, of course, you're a persecuted politician or a talk show host like Rush Limbaugh after he got busted for gobbling OxyContin and Vicodin. You know, he's not a criminal. He needs treatment. Poor guy. He swallowed so much Vicodin he went deaf because it kills off your auditory nerves. It also apparently turns you into a heartless prick who can get rich kicking people to the curb who can't afford fancy lawyers to sanitize their crimes. Speaking of cold-hearted and self-righteous, how about that Tom DeLay? Christian to the hilt, no coddler of criminals, they called him the Hammer in the House of Representatives. Indicted for vote fraud in Texas years ago, he had to resign from the House, but he hasn't been convicted, and likely won't be, because he has lawyers fighting for him, delaying justice. Also, coming out smelling sweet as a toilet deodorizer is Mark Foley, the Florida congressman who was texting underage congressional pages from the floor of the House, asking them to measure their genitals for him, teaching them the ins and outs of Washington politics. If you think he confined himself to cybersex, as the media puts it, then you could be a D.C. prosecutor, because they're not going to charge him with anything. Not quite so lucky was Randy Cunningham, the congressman who made bribing him easy by actually creating a menu for military contractors. The bigger the contract, the bigger the bribe. He's doing a healthy 8-year sentence, but he's asked the decider to commute his sentence before he heads back to Crawford. After all, he did it for Scooter Libby, the lawyer who outed a CIA agent on behalf of Dick Cheney, lied about it to the FBI, got convicted by a special prosecutor, and never spent a day in jail. Because even though Bush said he'd nail whoever was responsible for Libby's crime, he commuted his sentence because he took one for the Gipper. That's right. Scooter learned that much from Oliver North, who had a patriotic career dealing drugs and guns out of the White House and lied about it under oath to Congress with impunity. Right, immunity, not impunity. He got away with it. Yeah, he was immunized by Congress when they heard his confession, and the special prosecutor couldn't put the bite on it. Sadly, North was not elected to the Senate. He tripped on his big swinging, because Nancy Reagan told the press he lied to the Gipper. So he lost by 3 percentage points to a Democrat in Virginia, which just goes to show that even when the courts get it right, you can't trust the voters. Which brings us to an unelected official who is my personal most hated person and was too good for prison. The fiendish Judge Alberto Gonzales, the disgraced Attorney General, a man so dedicated to the science of cruelty that his biggest regret is probably that he wasn't born in the Middle Ages when he could have run the Spanish Inquisition. As legal advisor to Texas Governor George W. Bush, he turned down every request for a commutation from death row inmates. He became to Bush what Goebbels was to Hitler, inflating his self-importance to megalomania with the doctrine of the unitary executive, the strange idea that the president's power in wartime becomes infinite, a notion Bush so fell in love with that he turned into the war president, who thinks about everything with war on his mind, even spouting Orwellian phrases like, "When I'm talking about war, I'm talking about peace." Yeah, Bush really said that. Alberto, Bush's enabler, and a man far too good for prison, invented the Guantanamo offshore scam so he could argue that ridiculous legal theory that the courts have no power to supervise prisoners there because they are over in Castro land. Meanwhile, we have authority to strike terrorists wherever they may be found. Consistency is not the first concern of a criminal mind that wants legal protection for its crimes, though, is it? When Congress tired of hearing that national security prevented Alberto from explaining whether he had authorized CIA and contract interrogators to torture quote-unquote unlawful combatants, Alberto asserted his right to remain silent. And nobody said, "Waterboard that sucker." Nobody said, "Hang him up by his wrists." Nope, Alberto will never lose a wink of sleep. Never be forced to stand all night naked in a freezing cell, to be forced to pee on himself while shackled to a chair, or to lie in his own shit for days while dying of his injuries. Alberto is too good for that kind of treatment. He dishes it out and never has to take it. He will never be beaten with hoses until he admits to authorizing domestic spying, to wasting billions on a security apparatus that is still poring over our private lives as if something good could come of it. He will not be tortured with electroshock until he admits he fired 8 U.S. attorneys because they balked at rigging elections. He has nothing to worry about because we're stupid. It all began when Nixon, who had plotted the downfall of democracy and should have been convicted for it, was pardoned by Ford. When the Iran-Contra hearings were used to conceal Reagan's authorization for funneling money to the Contras, using North's bullshit immunized confession, they grew bolder. And the dirtbags from that era, including Cheney and Rumsfeld, came back to suck our blood and crap on our Constitution. They even brought back Poindexter, the admiral with the PhD who testified at the Iran-Contra hearings that he couldn't recall 68 times, who went to prison and then was brought back to run the domestic spying plot called what? Yeah, total information awareness. Tell me, why would you give that job to a man with a faulty memory? But no, it's not him that has the faulty memory. It's us. We are so pathetically stupid. Now they're stealing the last of the cash, looting the economy down to the last dime, breaking the system so that they hope we can't even try to rebuild our nation, taking the money for themselves so they can buy it back at their leisure. And what will we be told? That we have to heal, that we have no time for recriminations, that good people made honest mistakes, that we have to move forward, which is so much utter bullshit. We don't forgo convicting rapists, robbers, and killers because they need to heal. These people have raped us, robbed us, and sent people to kill and murder so that they can make money and enjoy political power by manipulating the media and stealing votes. They have left our sick without medicine, our aged without retirement, our young without schools, our workers without jobs. They have murdered the innocent and trampled our dignity here and abroad. And you want to forget? You want to heal? We're like a beautiful amnesiac who keeps waking up, screwed over by the same creep who just chuckles in the mirror every morning and leaves her a tip and says, "Hey, babe, good luck." Yeah, we're going to need it.